Now, you could make an argument that hide and seek is one of the greatest games of all time. Like we've all played it. It's a simple game. If you stay hidden, you win. So how well can you hide? Now, part of the reason that makes hide and seek great is that it really does kind of transcend generations. It's great when you're a kid. It's awesome when you're a kid. But it can even be great when you're an adult. Man, when I was a kid and whenever we played hide and seek, I got after it. I mean, I was playing to win. I know that probably surprises some of you about me. The neighborhood I grew up in had a lot of houses that were being built. So when we played hide and seek, we would play at night. We would play on a street that had multiple houses being built, and those houses under construction were fair game to hide in. So what I would do as a 10-year-old, I would go hide in the crawl space of an unfinished house because I knew no other 10-year-old was gonna look there at night. Told you I'm playing to win. Or I grew up in Indiana. Another great place to hide, cornfields. Cornfields are a great place to hide. Now, hiding in a cornfield at night, very creepy. It is. But it works if you're willing to stay committed. That's the kid side. But then if you're a parent, hide and seek is still great. It's a blast playing with your kids. And when they're young, when they start off playing the game, they're flat out terrible. They're just awful. Like they're awful, but they are very cute when they do it. Like they'll start off by hiding just in the corner of a room. Nothing concealing them, just stand in the corner with their eyes closed like this. And they think because they can't see with their eyes closed, that means that you can't see them either. Or they'll just make all kinds of noise where they're hiding. They'll even yell out because they want to be found by you. They want to be seen. And they don't believe you when you tell them that if you stay hidden, you're actually winning. But as they get older, they get better. They get a lot better to the point where it actually makes you nervous as a parent. Their friends and their siblings can't find them. Only you as their parent can find them. My kids got pretty good at hide and seek, and it got to that point where I, as their dad, was the only one that could find them. But there's an exception to this game because there's something about hide and seek that feels a little bit counterintuitive. Staying hidden doesn't feel like you're winning. Staying hidden feels like that's a problem or that it's punishment because that goes directly against something that's in all of us. But what if I told you that hiddenness, it's actually a gift? Jesus is about to drop another paradox right in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount. And the paradox that he's about ready to drop is a principle that has to do with being hidden or being seen. He's going to use 3 different examples to explain it in the first half of Matthew chapter 6. And these aren't 3 random examples he picks. Now, these 3 things are very, very important to the scribes and the Pharisees. So he's going to dismantle what those guys were doing so that you and I can see the principle. Here it is. It's in Matthew 6, verse 1. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. For then you have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. So first off, we're meant to practice our righteousness. Another way you could say that would be living out your faith. Because of what Jesus has done, if your faith is in him, then you have been given his righteousness. It's not your own, it's his. He's given it to you, which is pretty awesome. But this righteousness, we're not meant to just sit in that position of righteousness. We're actually meant to practice it. We're meant to live it out. That means following Jesus' lead, obeying what God's word says. The second thing, there are rewards. There's rewards. And we don't talk very often about the rewards that are attached to the gospel, but Jesus does. He's going to mention rewards 7 times in these 3 examples. And the reason I don't think that we talk very much about the rewards that are attached to the gospel, I think there's 2 big drivers. Number 1, either we don't realize that there actually are rewards that come from righteousness. But the bigger reason, I think we confuse a reward with a gift. And there's a big difference between a reward and a gift. A gift is something that you cannot earn. A gift is freely given to you from someone else. So salvation, it's a gift. Grace, it's a gift. You cannot earn salvation. You cannot earn grace. It is a gift from God. I can't remember who originally said this, so I don't know who to give credit to, but it's a great line that helps remember this. Grace is opposed to earning, but it's not opposed to effort. So it's another way of saying effort. Yeah, that's like you practicing your righteousness. You cannot earn grace. And I think when we hear, if you have any kind of church background, when we hear the word earn attached to the gospel, red flags go up right away, right? You can't earn anything. You can't earn grace. Absolutely. You cannot earn grace, but you can earn rewards. Like you can earn rewards in your own life right now, right? In your job or with friends or whatever. You can also earn rewards that come from the Lord. Just pretty awesome to think about. Now, Jesus isn't going to focus on exactly what those specific rewards are. We're going to talk a little bit more about that next week. What he's really getting after is motivation. You know, what reward do you really want? But here's the thing, why? Like, why are you really after that? The truth is this, there are no rewards attached to righteousness if you're looking for recognition. Practicing your righteousness in front of other people in order for you to be seen by them, is that your motivation? This one calls me out. Honestly, if I'm being honest with you, I care too much about what people think about me. I do. I don't want to. I wish I didn't, but I do. And I got to fight against it. I'm tempted to practice my righteousness in front of other people so people see me. And we all want to be seen to some extent. Like nobody wants to be just completely invisible to everybody else. Well, maybe some introverts do. And you might be saying, Matt, that's actually my dream. Or if you've ever been asked that icebreaker question, hey, if you could have one superpower, what would you pick? Would you pick to be able to fly, which that's the correct answer, fly or superhuman strength? I'm always concerned for the person that answers that question and says invisible. Like, really? That's kind of creepy. If you could pick any superpower, you would choose invisibility. I'm really questioning your motives. That's just kind of creepy. Like, we all want to be seen to some extent just to validate our existence. To say that we actually have value as a person, which is a good thing. That's a good desire. But what can happen very subtly is at some point that desire can actually switch and now you're driven by it without even knowing it. Now, I'm driven by this because if I'm seen by other people, maybe that will take care of an insecurity that I'm wrestling with. I don't know, if I'm seen, then that will show that I do have value, that validates who I am, and that will take care of this insecurity. And I get that thought process, it makes sense. But the truth is, being seen at best will just be a distraction to an insecurity. It won't remove it. It actually might even feed it, depending on what it is. Or maybe it has something to do with identity. If I'm seen, then maybe I can figure out who I really am, because honestly, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I'm supposed to be. I don't know what my identity is, so whatever gets me seen gets me celebrated, and whatever gets me celebrated, that must be my identity. If I'm affirmed, then I have an identity. Or it could be affection. I'm just starving for affection from other people. Affection from someone else or other people. That's a great thing. It's a great thing. But I'm not getting it, so if I'm seen by other people, then maybe I will actually get some affection. Or maybe it has to do with approval. Maybe that's what I'm really after. I've never been told by anybody that I'm enough. Or maybe it's the other end of the spectrum, and I've been praised by other people, and now that's a high that I just want more of. So if I'm seen, maybe I get approval. But the truth about that is, approval is a race that has no finish line. If you're chasing after the approval of other people, you're just never gonna stop running. Everybody wants to be known. Everybody wants to be seen. But if you're not careful, this desire can consume you and start to corrode your soul, because now you're willing to be seen for all the wrong things or seen for the wrong reasons. Things that you might not believe, things that you might not agree with, things that you might not even like, but hey, at least I'm being seen now, and being seen is much better than not being seen at all. This desire that turns into a driver, it happens subtly, and every single person here is vulnerable to it. And nobody would say that that's the motivation to deal with insecurity or identity, approval, affection, or whatever else. But if you're following Jesus, if you're doing what he says, if you're fulfilling all righteousness, if you start doing those things, then the temptation you will face is that you will be tempted to practice your righteousness, those righteous good things. You'll be tempted to practice that in front of other people so that they see you. That's what Jesus is warning against. I mean, he says, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward No reward from your Father who is in heaven. Thus, or another way of saying, for example, thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the street corners, that they might be praised by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. Giving was and still is a very righteous thing that we get to do. But by Jesus' day, what had happened was that some of the religious leaders had taken that to some pretty absurd extremes. Let me give you some quick history. If you ever hear the term Second Temple Judaism, that's referring to a period in history in Israel between 516, right around 516 BC, when the temple was rebuilt in Jerusalem after the exile to Babylon. It's between that point all the way up to 70 AD when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and they destroyed that second temple. In Second Temple Judaism, a lot of different things happened, but some different religious groups popped up, like the Pharisees. They emerged out of that time period. So did the Sadducees. And with different religious groups came different religious traditions. Some religious traditions that already existed became even more extreme. So if you ask the question, why should I give money? Second Temple Judaism would answer that and say, to atone for sin. You give your money to pay for and take care of your own sin. And that's pretty messed up theology. We know that that couldn't be further from the truth, but that kind of teaching wasn't uncommon to hear that back then, which kind of gives a new light to what Jesus says in Matthew 19. Jesus says, hey, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. It's kind of a weird line. And if you have any kind of church background at all, you're taught when you hear that, hey, that's talking about, hey, what really has control of our heart? Money will be the chief competitor of your heart. And money can be one of the biggest blockers between you and following Jesus, which is true. Jesus is actually going to get to that later on. But that's not all that means. It's confusing to us, but it meant something a little bit different then. When the disciples heard that, they were totally confused by it too. They're like, how can anybody understand this? Because to them, it was easy for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven because he had enough money. He could take care of it. He could buy his way in. He could pay for his own sin by giving to somebody who's poor. And Jesus is like, no, not at all. That's impossible. So of course, it's easier for something like a camel going through the eye of a needle. That's easier or more likely to happen than something that is literally impossible, like buying your way into the kingdom. You cannot give money to somebody who's poor, and that makes your sin okay. That takes care of your sin. The kingdom of heaven was bought for you. You can't buy it. It was bought for you with Christ's blood. So not only did these guys have some pretty messed up theology, on top of that, they wanted to double down and make sure everybody knew about it. They were blowing trumpets when they gave. They were acting like, oh man, my wallet's stuck. I can't quite get it out. Just to give a little bit more time for people to pay attention as they gave. It was a look at me, look at me. Look how much I'm giving, and I'm giving to save myself, which is a slap in the face to God. Their reward was the recognition from people that saw them. And Jesus says, you're a hypocrite. The word hypocrite originally means an actor who wears a big mask to disguise the role he's playing. So Jesus is saying, don't be like those guys. Don't be actors. Don't be an actor. Actors need to be seen. Actors need applause. Actors need to be praised. And there's nothing wrong in and of itself of being praised. Man, if you do something good or somebody praises you, that's not bad in and of itself at all. But is being recognized, is being seen, the praise from other people, is that really a worthwhile reward? I don't know that it is. And Jesus certainly says that it's not. Author Eugene Peterson, he said this: church leaders frequently warn against drugs and sex, but, at least in America, church leaders almost never warn about the crowds. Praise and approval from other people, that's a dangerous narcotic too. It's addicting. And if praise and approval from other people, if that's your reward, well, the same people that praise you might be the same people that criticize you. Could be the same people that slander you. Man, on top of that, if that's really your reward, praise, recognition, approval from other people, it wears off. It's kind of like a fake Rolex. Looks great at first, but eventually it's going to turn your wrist green. And if you really, now some of you got that, like, oh yeah, all right. And if you really are looking for the praise and approval of other people, you can never stop. Once you're praised for something, people aren't going to praise you for the same thing again. You got to go to more extremes to do something even more praiseworthy. It never stops. You're going to keep running and running and running. And if this really is your reward, what happens when you don't get it? I mean, how much is that going to mess with your head? People want what's real. Nobody wants fake. Most people can smell fake a mile away. Jesus is saying, don't be fake, don't be an actor, don't blow a trumpet every time you're about to do something good or do something righteous. Well, Matt, I don't have a trumpet, so I think I'm good to go. I get it. Most of us don't have trumpets, but most of us do have social media, or we're connected online in some way. The same street corners and synagogues that Jesus is talking about, we have them in our pockets. So if the approval and recognition and praise of other people, if that's your goal, if that's your reward, man, the street corners and synagogues we have in our pockets, that's a great place to chase it. It's a great place for virtue signaling. It's a great place to show off your accomplishments. It's a great place to say, look at all the righteous things that I do. Look at the righteous things that I say. Look at the righteous things that I believe. I deserve your applause. Let's go. Is that your motivation? And I just bring that up. Social media, connected online, those are just two little examples. But those are great places to be an actor. Where else are you tempted to be an actor? Be careful with that. Instead, but when you give to the needy, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing, so that your giving may be in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. One is trying to be seen, and the other is trying to be in secret. That's the dichotomy you've got to wrestle with. God sees in secret, but he does not see you when you are trying to be seen by other people. He sees the act for sure, but he does not see the righteousness that's attached to the act, and the righteousness is what he rewards. So what Jesus is saying, this principle that Jesus is trying to unpack, it is a paradox. Here it is. If you want to be seen, you got to be hidden. If you want to be seen, you got to be hidden. He's saying those good things that you do, those righteous things, if you do them in secret, don't worry about other people. God sees it and he rewards in secret. Kind of like when my kids got really good at hide and seek, to the point where I, as their dad, I was the only one that could see them. When they got to that point, just me seeing them, that's when they were winning. Invisible righteousness is actually visible. Others don't see it. They don't see the act, but they're going to see the effects of it, even if they don't know what the source is. Others don't see it, but God does. He does, and he rewards that. So I think you and I, we got to back up and ask ourselves a question. Who do you really want to be seen by? Who do you really want to be seen by? Do you want to be seen by God or other people? What reward do you really want? I mean, is the praise and affirmation, approval, the small praise and affirmation from other people that wears off, is the fake Rolex really better than the rewards you will receive from the God who created the universe? Man, I got to think that it's impossible that they are. The fake Rolex isn't better, so don't settle for it. Practice your righteousness. The examples that Jesus gives, whether that's giving, praying, fasting, all of the other things that Jesus himself does, what we're told to do, how we imitate him. Practice that stuff in secret, not to be seen by others, not to be noticed by others. Trust that being hidden is okay. And I know that feels like an affront to our culture. You're told that if you don't self-promote yourself, then you're less than. It's scary because, man, if I'm invisible, what does that mean? Do I have no value? Trust that it's okay to be hidden. That obscurity is actually okay. Jesus, roughly 30 of his 33 years were lived in complete obscurity. It's about 90% of his life. I love what author Ronald Rolheiser says about this. He says, ordinary life can be enough for us. It can be enough for us, but only if we first undergo the martyrdom of obscurity and enter Christ's hidden life. So about 90% of the Son of God's life was hidden, and then the last 3 years of his life, his public ministry, he still hid some things there, like the transfiguration. Like he goes up onto this mountain with just Peter, James, and John. He goes up onto this mountain in Matthew 17, and he's transformed into his glory, like what he looks like in heaven. And then Moses and Elijah show up, and he's just chatting it up with Moses and Elijah. Like one represents the law, one represents all the prophets. He's just chatting it up there, and after he's done, he goes back down the mountain with Peter, James, and John, and he says, guys, don't tell anybody about this. Like, really? Or how many times did he heal people, and after he heals someone, he's like, shh, don't tell anybody who did this. Or casting out demons. He would cast out demons, then tell them to shut up and not say anything about him. Or he calmed a storm just by telling the wind to stop. I wish I could have done that this past week. He walked on water. Only the 12 got to see that, and he never said a word about it after that. Or he goes into a room with just Peter, James, and John, and he raises a girl back from the dead and doesn't tell anybody about it. He doesn't live stream it. I think I would have live streamed that. On top of that, I guarantee you this. I promise you this is true. There are so many other things that Jesus did that we have no idea about because he even hid all of those from the disciples. John 21:25 says that Jesus did so many more things that if they were all written down, there are not enough books in the world to contain them. So if the Son of God, Jesus Christ, is okay with the righteousness that he does, if he's okay with that being hidden, you and I can be too. We can be okay with it. There's something in it for us to follow. The most mature people, they are not consumed with this drive to be seen. They're just not. I mean, have you ever been around somebody who is just seriously incredibly spiritually mature? They're wise, bearing all kinds of fruit. There are multiple people in this room right now that's you when I think of someone like that. Someone I want to be around, man, I really wish I could be like him. I really want to be like her. Have you ever been around someone like that, and at the same time, they're also a look at me type person? No, you've never met somebody like that. Instead, they're humble. They're not worried about whether they're seen or praised or approved of, which is why those people also seem like they have a freedom and a joy that nobody else has. It's not about not caring about what other people think about you. Like, you're always going to care to some degree. And if you're that guy that's saying, no, I don't care at all what people think about me, yeah, you do. Just be real. Be honest with yourself. And if you really think, I don't care what other people think about me, I'm questioning if you're even connected to people. It's not about whether you care or not if other people think about you. The key is to not be driven by what other people think about you. There's freedom in that. Practicing your righteousness in secret will help you experience that. So something like giving that's meant to be between you and God. Giving is meant to teach you to trust God, to worship God, to connect with God, to grow in your relationship with him, to trust him and seek him for your rewards. Giving or other righteous things that Jesus talks about, that's meant to be between you and God. That's not for other people to see. So before you do something good, before you're ready to practice your righteousness, ask yourself, would I still do this if nobody ever knew about it? Would I do this, would I give, would I pray, would I fast, whatever? Would I do this if nobody knew about it? Well, what about salt and light? Didn't Jesus already say earlier on, didn't he say, let your light shine so that other people would see your good works? And if they see your good works, then they will give glory to your Father is in heaven. So he said, let people see your good works. But now in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is saying, no, do it in secret. So which one is it? Is Jesus just contradicting himself? Great question. The answer is no. Here's why. It's not whether or not what you do is seen. It's, are you doing those things so that they are seen? It's a question of motivation. Do you want people to see God, or do you want people to see you? Are you doing it for your own benefit, or are you doing it for the benefit of others? You can't see salt on food, right? You can't see salt on food, but you can taste it. It's not about the salt. It's about the food the salt is making better. You may not be able to see the source of light, but you can see everything else because of it. When you walk out into the lobby after the service and you look out west, you're not going to see the sun, but you can see everything because of the sun. Salt and light are not about themselves. They're there to make other things better and other things visible. So yes, be visible, but not for the sake of being visible. Your motivation has to be for other people to see Jesus, not see you. And this hiddenness, this is a key characteristic to walking this narrow path that Jesus is calling you to. Again, I know that, man, we're told you got to be visible. It's scary to not be seen. But again, if the Son of God didn't promote himself, you and I can too. Now, I wonder if part of the reason why it's so easy for people to be driven by this need to be seen is part of the reason because we make other people feel invisible. And when I say we, I mean everybody on the planet. Do we make people feel invisible because we're so focused on making ourselves visible with whatever trumpet we got? So what about this? What if we can take that fear of being invisible? What if we can take it away from people by modeling it ourselves and making people around us feel seen? If you can make people feel seen around you, that is incredibly powerful. To say to somebody, I see you, I notice you, I see the hard work you're doing, I see your integrity, I see how you're blessing other people, even if you don't see it, I see it. I see you as a person. To make someone feel seen, to tell someone they are seen, incredibly powerful. You can do that simply with authentic encouragement. Being overly generous with someone with authentic, specific encouragement makes somebody feel seen without having to chase after it themselves. Or serving. If you just see a need and go after it, even if you don't see a need, but if you see an opportunity to serve somebody, it could be in such an incredibly small way, but if you go out of your way to serve someone, that says to them, I see you. So if we can make people feel seen, will that make them feel like they don't have to be seen themselves, and will that then make them be more open to seeing Jesus? Because they're not looking at themselves. I mean, that's what Jesus is telling us. If you're not looking at yourself, then it's a lot easier to be in secret like Jesus is talking about. If your focus is to notice other people, then you won't be worried about noticing yourself. And if you're not worried about noticing yourself, you're not worried about making other people notice you either. That's what Jesus is talking about when he says your left hand and your right hand. But when you give to the needy, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. You're like, your left hand not knowing what your right hand is doing when it comes to giving, that means don't tell other people about what you're giving. And at the same time, don't make your giving a big deal to yourself. Look how much I gave. Even if you only say that to yourself, you're being an actor. He says, don't do that. Giving will become second nature. It'll become part of who you are when you're doing what Jesus is saying here, when it's in secret, when it's about him, not anybody else, not about you. It just becomes second nature. I play golf, so there's a lot of muscle memory in my swing. I don't even think about my swing because I've done it for so long. Or think about a musician playing the guitar. I'm willing to bet Tommy doesn't think at all about what his fingers are doing when he plays. It's just a part of who he is. That's what Jesus is getting after. When you're giving in secret just to please God, when you're giving just for the pleasure of being able to give, it becomes second nature, it becomes who you are, and rewards are attached to that. Jesus describes it in Matthew 25. He says, then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous, notice how that's how he describes them. Then the righteous will answer him saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you? We don't know. Or when were you thirsty and we gave you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and welcome you in, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? They had no idea. The king will answer, truly I say to you, as you did for one of the least of these my brothers, you did for me. The righteous that he's talking about there, those who are blessed, those who are being rewarded, they had no idea they were giving. It's just a part of who they were. They were doing it without even thinking about it. It was second nature to them. They didn't even know it was Jesus they were serving. When you're focused on him and not yourself, and you realize that being invisible and trust God that he will reward you in that you don't have to worry about being in obscurity, that the Son of God spent 90% of his life in obscurity, then it becomes who you are, to practice your righteousness. What Jesus told us to do, what he modeled for us, what people in here who are farther along in your faith, if you're imitating them, when you practice those things in secret, not only do you grow, not only do other people get blessed by you, but God's like, I'm gonna reward that. And I love to reward that. The rewards will happen now, and I can't tell you what specifically they might be for you as an individual, but we also have rewards coming for us in heaven. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind can imagine what God has prepared for those, his rewards, what God has prepared for those who love him. Trust that is so much better than a fake Rolex. Hey, why don't you stand up for me? I'm gonna pray over you, and then we're gonna continue to worship. Father God, thank you so much for teaching this. Jesus, you modeled it for us, and this is hard. To stay hidden, it's hard. You know that we all struggle with it. It's just a bedrock of our culture to self-promote, to make sure that you're seen, because we're afraid of being invisible. We're afraid we don't exist to anybody else or that we're less than. Would you just convince us and let us trust you that you see in secret and you reward in secret? I pray that everybody in this room and everybody online, that you would show each one of us right now what it looks like to do, whatever righteous thing you're calling us to do, what that obedience looks like in secret. And then will you also show us how you've rewarded us in the past so that we can trust you? Help us to do this well. Help us to be salt and light that are visible, not to be visible for visible sake, but so we can make much of you and other people come to you. We love you, Jesus. We trust you. In your precious name we pray. Amen.